Hey folks, and welcome to the latest installment of Dave's Impressions. This time around, Vagrant Story, one of the cult classics of the PS1 JRPG library. We need more acronyms! These impressions were taken from playing the game for around 3 hours. Enjoy! Man, the intro to Vagrant Story holds up remarkably well all these years later. I love how the music builds throughout the whole sequence along with the drama. I love the choices of angles, the way the camera moves, the editing, and how each small story beat wipes to a credit screen, giving little moments of reflection to the overall build. I was reminded of an article I read last year theorizing that a game cannot be cinematic if the player is in control of the camera. Only directed cutscenes or games with fixed camera angles qualify. Because of the way the introduction is orchestrated, the word cinematic kept appearing in my head as a description, even if it only applies to the cutscenes. Cinematic or not, I definitely wanted to keep playing to see what would happen next. Vagrant Story's story hooked me long before the title appeared. The game itself was less successful in hooking me, if just because so much of it is spent in menus. It feels like the game is wanting you to use the right weapon for the right encounter, so during every fight, aside from opening the attack menu and selecting which body part to hit, I was checking out my equipment, using items, and casting spells. Even checking the map, as I got lost more often than I would like to admit. While I feel the game wants me to use the right weapon for the right encounter, the weapons change depending on what kind of enemy is fought. The more I use a sword against beasts or undead, for instance, the better that sword is going to be at dealing damage to those enemy types. Weapons can be disassembled, combined, and crafted in a workshop. Theoretically. I spent far too long trying to craft a better weapon and got nowhere for my troubles. What I didn't take into account when turning my trusty sword into a giant spear of death is that the animations for chaining attacks together would be different and I would have to relearn the timing all over again, hampering myself more than if I just used my starter sword, which had gotten quite powerful through the 3 hours of play. I wonder if it's possible to get through the game without too much difficulty by ignoring the crafting system entirely, just using the game's default weapon along with those picked up in chests or dropped by enemies. I found a dagger called a Soul Kiss that had wonderful stats against undead and phantoms, so I kept that one around for the next time I ran into a ghost. I mentioned chaining attacks together. I think this is at the crux of the battle system. By pressing the square, triangle, or circle buttons on the DualShock at the right time, the attack will continue, and depending on what abilities are assigned to those buttons, different modifiers will apply. If the timing is right, it's possible to chain any enemy until they die. Even near the end of my time at the game, I had difficulty getting the timing right depending on the animation. I love the idea that if good enough, any enemy come across will never even have a chance to attack. It was especially important in one of the boss fights, as I was doing little damage and the knight was hitting hard. Aside from getting the timing of the chain attacks down, Vagrant Story is a game that gives me the impression of being more difficult than it actually is. I was making constant progress each play session, and the only time I ever had to load a previous save was because of all my failed experiments in the workshop. While I like the concept of chaining together attacks and finding the right weapon for the right enemy, I feel the menu-heavy nature of the game and the way the battle system works is too stop and start for my liking. And because I wasn't able to understand crafting, I was anxious about being unprepared for what the game was going to throw at me. Thanks for watching. So, should you play a Vagrant Story? Well, the video made on Vagrant Story over at Dark Pixel Gaming was one of the reasons I decided to play the game for impressions and make this video myself. And in that video they talked about that the director of the game wanted to make a hardcore Japanese role-playing game, a game for enthusiasts of the genre. That's why the crafting system is so complex and the battle system has so many modifiers associated with it. So if you're one of those players that really likes the complex nuts and bolts like min-maxing of an RPG system, I think you'll be right at home in Vagrant Story. If you play through the intro, which I think everyone should at least go and watch the intro just because it's so masterfully put together and the story gets hooks into you, I think maybe you might be able to make it through with maybe a walkthrough or using the default weapon like I was using without too much difficulty. But if the game seems too obtuse for you, if it seems too stop and start, if the PS1 era visuals put you off, even with upping textures a little like I was using emulation for this video, then perhaps you should leave this one to history. So, please tell me below in the comments what you think of Vagrant Story, what you think of this video covering Vagrant Story. If you'd like to help the channel and show me some love, please like, please subscribe if you haven't already, please share this with your friends, and until next time, I hope you're all having a wonderful day.